There might be more Halloween unproduced sequels than there are actual sequels, with the first scrap sequel idea dating as far back as 1979 when John Carpenter was approached about penning a sequel. And as we know, it has been well documented that his intentions for Michael Myers was always to be a single film with the Halloween franchise turning into an anthology. However, as we know, Hollywood bigwigs can care less about the creative vision when there's money to be made. Something that seems to have been the primary driver behind many of the Halloween sequels that we have received, sacrificing continuity, pulling apart timelines, and creating a Michael Myers multiverse that might make more sense than the DCEU when you apply Marvel's variant logic to it. But we are not here to talk comic book movies, and instead, we are kicking off 31 Days of Halloween on the Pop 5 by delving into 5 lost sequels in the Halloween franchise that you may never have,
or probably,
heard of.
Number 5. Halloween 2, High-Rise Horror. It was rare to see a successful horror film in the 70s get a sequel. After its re-release in theaters a year later, talks of a sequel began, and naturally John Carpenter was invited back to direct. However, he had already moved on to other projects, so he agreed to write and produce the film with Deborah Hill. In Carpenter's sequel, a few years would have passed since Michael Myers first came home and Laurie Strode had moved out away from Haddonfield to escape the horrors of that night. She was now living in a high-rise apartment that featured tight security, and she had become much more aware of her surroundings. Prior to Halloween, Carpenter had written and directed a made-for-TV movie, Someone's Watching Me, which had a very similar plot to this proposed sequel for Halloween. Whether it was lazy writing, a disinterest in returning to the franchise, or seeing an opportunity to retell that story with a bigger budget, we don't know. But one would have to wonder how the sequel would have played out with Michael being in a new surrounding with plenty of cattle to slay while seeking out Laurie to finish what he started. Number 4.
Halloween 3D. To complete the remake trilogy started by Rob Zombie, writer Todd Farmer and director Patrick Lussier of My Bloody Valentine 3D fame were brought on to finish out the trilogy, which would have repaired the ending to H2. See, the film would end with Laurie realizing that she had been stabbing Dr. Loomis to death and not Michael. They would then run away together, pursued by police, where Michael would leave behind a trail of bodies before being set on fire and vanishing in an encounter with the police. Laurie is captured and committed to an asylum. 1 year later, Michael returns to set his sister free, killing everyone in his path until they escape, continuing their reign of terror down on the town of Haddonfield. That is until Laurie has had enough and commits suicide by prompting Michael to kill her. With all of his family dead, Michael disappears into the night. In this film, there would have been a great unmasking, as in one scene it's revealed that he now is wearing a mask over his previous mask, which has melted to his face.
Number 3. Halloween Returns. Before Blumhouse got involved in the Halloween franchise, a direct sequel to Halloween 2 was in the works, taking advantage of the 80s nostalgia that was starting to sweep horror. In Returns, it would have been 1988, and Michael Myers was about to be executed for his crimes after serving 10 years on death row. The character Officer Hunt from Halloween 2 was now sheriff and was preparing for his execution, along with Michael's newly obsessed Dr. Hunt's son, who witnessed Michael murder his mother and wants to see the execution, and who is also a friend of the doctor's daughter, Sophia. He sneaks into the viewing room on the night Michael is supposed to die. However, after the lethal injection fails to take effect, Michael fights to get free while locking eyes with Sophia. Michael manages to escape while leaving a trail of bodies behind him, and the media covers it up by stating he died in an explosion that occurred at the prison shortly after his escape. Michael emerges a year later on Halloween night, stalking Sophia and killing everyone who crosses his path in a similar fashion to how he ripped through Haddonfield in Halloween Kills. Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, writers of Saw 4 through 7, were helming the project and were set to begin filming before Dimension Studios lost the rights. Number 2.
Halloween, Two Faces of Evil. It would appear that David Gordon Green was very aware of the previously unmade sequels where elements from Halloween Returns seem to be apparent in the new trilogy, as well as the story idea behind Halloween, Two Faces of Evil, where actor Adam Hahn Bird, who played the horny best friend in Halloween H2O, was actually hired to play a Michael Myers copycat killer. In this film, we open to police investigating a series of babysitter killings that appear to be strikingly similar to Michael Myers' murders decades earlier. Unsure if Myers is still incarcerated, the police seek him out in a prison where he has been condemned to solitary confinement to live out his remaining days. Soon after, Michael momentarily dies in prison, but he reawakens as his body is being tended to and escapes the morgue. He arrives in a nearby town where he begins stalking, killing girls at an all-girls boarding school, while the police follow leads from the earlier babysitter murders that lead them back to a magician who is a fanboy of Michael Myers. Our story reaches a climax at a school dance where Michael continues his attacks, and as police arrive at the scene, they shoot and kill Myers, only to discover that when they unmask him, it was the magician under the mask, and that there were two killers stalking the school, and they were only able to stop one, while the real Michael Myers disappears into the darkness.
Number 1. Halloween, Michael Myers versus Pinhead. After the success of Freddy vs. Jason, Dimension Films was hungry to benefit from the wave of the Versus movies. The idea of pairing the slasher icons was conceived, Clive Barker was attached to write the story, and John Carpenter would return to direct. Now, while it wasn't clear on why production fell apart or even how far it got, an idea for this crossover was pitched a decade earlier by filmmaker Dave Parker. In his concept, it would have been revealed that Sam Hain would have escaped hell when 8-year-old Michael Myers came across the puzzle box, unleashing Sam Hain and becoming possessed by him. Fast forward ahead 25 plus years later, and the story picks back up when a group of kids or teenagers find the puzzle box inside the abandoned Myers house. They solve the puzzle, unleashing Pinhead.
It seems that evil does run in the family.
Pinhead soon encounters Myers and realizes that he is Sam Hain, and the two square off, with the finale taking them both to hell.
So there is a list 10 to 15 movies deep of Halloween sequels that have never been made. Some of them good ideas, better than what we've got on screen, and some of them just completely horrible. There are 2 on this list that are my favorite. The first being Halloween, Two Faces of Evil. I like that concept. I thought it was very smart, very ahead of its time, and compared to what we got in Halloween Ends, this story seems and sounds a lot more superior.
Well, for one, it sounds like Michael didn't turn into a little sissy and let some teenage bullied kid fight and win, which makes no sense to me. That was horrible. So that seems like a better concept, just at least because they're still keeping Michael as the menacing person that he is. I mean, the menacing shape or whatever that he is. I mean, he's a big dude, and you're expecting me to believe that this kid who was bullied by the band kids
Yeah.
is somehow stronger than Michael. It doesn't, none of it made sense. I'm sorry, Danny McBride needs to stop making movies or remaking movies, whatever, because he's not good at it.
The only way that movie would have made sense to me is if they would have brought in the Cult of Thorn, because when we did our theory on it, it all made sense. When you add up all the pieces and why Michael ended up the way he did, and why Corey ended up the way he did, it makes sense, because it's the transfer of evil from one person to another, and it's tied to the cult. But if we throw that all out and we look at just having a copycat killer of Michael Myers, which I never thought I really wanted, until I read parts of the script, I was like, that's pretty good. It's not like the Silence of the Lambs like they were talking about and joking about in many articles that are out there. It's completely different. And I thought this probably would have been really good. And the shocker is that was written to be straight to DVD or straight to VHS at the time.
Wow. So a lot of people would have never even seen it.
Exactly. So I wish they would have made that, but of course Jamie Lee Curtis was hired, and then H2O came along, and that idea was flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
My second favorite idea, or my first favorite idea on this, and I don't like Pinhead, but that story build-up, or that story synopsis of how they cross and meet, that is just amazing, because you finally get an explanation for why young Michael did what he did, and why he's grown up into what he has, because he played with the puzzle box and unleashed Sam Hain. Sam Hain possessed him. That's why you see him. And now you have the Pinhead coming back. It's like, oh, I remember you. You thought you were going to get away that easy, and then we have that clash. That's just great.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
No?
First of all, I despise Pinhead. I don't like the Hellraiser movies. I don't like the original. I don't like the remake. They all suck. And why Michael did what he did, he was a sociopathic little child. It happens. I watch a lot of ID. Like, it actually happens. There's your answer. Case closed.
You just ruined the whole entire story.
Sorry.
We don't need reality. This is a movie. It's our escape from reality. So
I don't need to escape from reality by bringing in Pinhead and Sam Hain. Maybe Sam Hain, because I do like Trick or Treat, but not Pinhead. He needs to stay in his own freaking world.
I guess. Well, what do you think of those two stories that could have been potential sequels? Do you like them like I do, or do you like Jenn? Now, the other one's probably the worst one on this list is Halloween 3D. Yeah, I want to give credit that, the writer and director from Saw and Drive Angry, maybe they would have brought some justice to the third part, but seeing Laurie Strode go crazy and go out on the road with him, and they're on like a brother-sister killing spree, seems a little like
far-fetched.
No,
even
Devil's
for a horror
Rejects.
movie. I mean, I guess, obviously this movie would have come before Devil's Rejects, but they don't start out as a brother and sister team, so why would they end up that way? It's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand how in all these supposed, scenarios, Michael is now all of a sudden like so intelligent that he can break somebody out of a mental institution, and like when did he learn to drive a car? I mean, he did that too, which is just ridiculous. He never went past first grade?
Well, he's crazy, so he has an object in front of him, and that's the thing that he is solely focusing on. So
I get it.
From the first two films, it's always been about Laurie.
Yeah.
So it makes sense where in the third one, it's like, I'm going to find where she's at, I'm going to get her at all costs, and then I'm going to bring her with me.
But then she teams up with him.
Until she realizes her mistakes.
Batman and Robin? Well, it's too late she realized her mistakes after she went on a killing spree with her psycho brother. What? No. Then that just makes you just as bad as him.
Yep.
So she's not the victim.
Then there's Halloween Returns with the lethal injection doesn't work, which now I'm interested to find out how many times that may have actually failed in real life to see if that would have played out nicely in the story. There's an explosion at the prison. There's a prison riot. He escapes for a year and just goes to God knows where, like he does in most of the Rob Zombie movies and the Halloween new trilogy, where he just vanishes and then comes back. And then he's like, I got a new girl I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to go after her for watching me get possibly murdered.
Yeah, so the electric chair thing, I know people have made it through that, and it has not killed them. And then I thought, so what they do after that is then they resort to lethal injection.
No, it differs by state. Some states...
I mean, if it's like legal or whatever, yeah. Because I know they can only try the electrocution like twice, I think, and if it doesn't work, then I don't know what happens if lethal injection isn't in that state. I don't know, but I don't know of anyone having survived the lethal injection. Not that I've ever looked it up. So
yeah, I remember when I was a kid, people would say, "Oh, if you survive the electrocution once, then you're a free person." But I never looked into it because it wasn't in the encyclopedias back then.
Yeah.
And then I never Googled it as an adult, so I don't know what that fact is. But if you know what that fact is, drop it in the comments.
Yeah, that was definitely something that was like a rumor kind of went around when we were in school. And like you said, we did not have the World Wide Web.
Yeah, and people were a lot stupider back then. They believed anything.
Oh, yeah. They definitely believed like all of the, urban legends that got passed around. So, because we had no way to back it up.
Just think, if people today thought you got the coronavirus from drinking Corona beer, just imagine how stupid we were back then.
Yeah.
And then lastly, there is high-rise horror. And I don't think John Carpenter ever really wanted to come back after Halloween was done. And it just seems like, yeah, nah. And that's why he's so easily backed out every time that they've come to him. It's like, hey, you want to direct again? Yeah, sure, give me all this money. No, we're not gonna do that. It's like, all right, see ya. So I think he was like a one and done. He wants to move past Halloween because honestly, like when we've seen him in Q&As, what did he talk about? He talked about The Thing. He talked about They Live.
Yeah.
And then he kind of talked about Halloween, but he talked about some of his other works over Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he only really talked about Halloween kind of when it was brought up, like if he was asked a question or something like that. It wasn't, or if it was like pertinent to the conversation, but other than that, he didn't really talk about Halloween. And I mean, that whole idea just gives me like Jason Takes Manhattan vibes. Like, I don't know why they always have to bring everything into the city. I just don't get it.
It would have been interesting, but I think, and a lot of people say, oh, I like that better than the current Halloween 2. I really like Halloween 2 for what it is in the hospital. I thought it was a perfect pickup from the last movie, even though there is several years in between and people look different. Yeah, I get that point. It's a movie, defy logic sometimes, and then you will enjoy something. But this, I don't know. It doesn't seem to fit right.
It's kind of like when they, change a TV character, like Mandy in Last Man Standing, halfway into the series, and she looks completely different. So then they just poke fun at it. You just have to let it go.
Yeah, what I'm thinking here is like, all right, so if she's moved away from Haddonfield, she's gone to a city with high rises, it's got security, so it's going to be one of the more prominent cities. You think of New York, maybe Chicago, LA, something like that. What is Michael doing? Going in the phone book, going through names. There's no computers, right?
Well, that's just it,
How
right?
is he finding her?
So he's looking through the yellow pages, and I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say she probably changed her name, though that isn't said. I'm guessing she changed her name. So how is he finding her? Like, come on.
Yeah. The story almost, not only is it very close to what he delivered before, but it reminds me of the real life story of Alice in Friday the 13th. From the first part to the sequel where she was getting stalked in real life, so they just brought her on really quick and then killed her off. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit, even though, I don't know, that's just me. So what Halloween sequels do you know of that we didn't talk about on our list? Let us know by dropping it in the comments. Do you have a particular favorite one that we talked about, or one that is out there that, again, we didn't talk about? Let us know by dropping it in the comments. And this is the kickoff to our 31 days of Halloween, so we'll be doing a lot of different things this time around. Not a daily review or Halloween memories, because that's a lot of work. But we'll have a lot of good Halloween content and changes in subjects on certain things, so enjoy. And since you're here watching this, and since it's Halloween time, you have to like Halloween, you have to like candy, you have to like the video, because every like helps us broaden our audience. And what else should we do?
Comment, share, and subscribe.
Yes, please do that. And until the next Pop 5, see ya.